And then you see in contrast to that, a straight alignment.
That's the yellow.
That's the yellow, which is, in my estimation, a viable alternative for what this crossing could look like. Now, it does a number of things. It brings what is the equivalent of 20 city blocks back into urban use. It straightens the freeway. Now, everybody knows who lives in the community that there's that very awkward jog as you drop down from the hill, Fort Vancouver, and get onto I-5. Well, with the freeway further downstream, the jog will be a gentle, sweeping, large S-turn. So when we have geometry that is not simple, in a complex environment of off-ramps and on-ramps, you create congestion, and with the consequence of congestion is a less safe bridge. So I know that if you straighten the alignment, you gain a lot of safety, and I would think fewer fatalities over the life of the bridge.
So the yellow here is what you're proposing.
Right.
This being a much narrower footprint.
Right, and in all fairness for the viewers, if they can see the screen, the yellow is the additional land take for a straight alignment.
Okay.
And we'll talk about collector and distributor because there's something that's at play there.
Okay.
And the red represents land we would not necessarily take. We would not take if we went with a straight bridge. What's not colored, there's no difference between the two notions.
Okay. So what you're showing is the difference.
The difference.
The impact difference between the
Right.
two designs. How could you end up with it with a straight alignment that's so much more narrow, lower cost, safer? What allowed you to do this? Why wouldn't, what constraint ended up with the complex design that we have now?
I won't call it a trick, but one of the fundamental choices you have when putting freeways into urban environments is the collector-distributor.
What does that mean?
A collector-distributor means all the people that want to get on and off in that dense portion of the city that would want to have multiple points to get on and off, Hayden Island, Vancouver, Martin Luther King, Marine Road Drive, they get to get onto a separate, distinct road before they reach that critical area. And then from that roadway, that collector-distributor, then they would slow down and travel that collector-distributor slightly lower speed, maybe 45 miles an hour, and then they would get off of that to meet with the communities.
So we have this yellow bridge or the straight line bridge that you're proposing has two levels.
It has two levels.
And you have traffic going north on one level and south on the other level?
No, what we have is we have an upper level that's dedicated to interstate movement.
Okay, that's your high-speed traffic in the upper level.
Right, and that's for people going between, say, Portland and Seattle.
Okay.
That's the traffic that uses the interstate for regional movements. That traffic doesn't want to commingle with the shore-to-shore traffic, which is
more of a bypass.
Right. You want your shore-to-shore traffic to be available for freight mobility, for grandma and grandpa who are wanting to drive from shore to shore. You don't want them necessarily mixing with the high-speed traffic.
Okay.
You take a semi across the bridge and you have to go up, over, and down. You're going to be impeding the flow if it must commingle with the through traffic. Now, the present design deals with that by having those multiple lanes on the shoulders. Okay, so if we take those multiple lanes and just bring them underneath and keep them separate, then the through traffic basically moves through without any conflict with local traffic. And then the local traffic, the shore-to-shore traffic, can be dealt with much like an urban arterial, a shore-to-shore bridge that caters to the needs of the communities on either shore. So the collector-distributor can be used, if discretely used as a different level in the bridge, as a way of connecting the communities without subjecting those movements to interstate highway speeds. So essentially the communities end up benefiting by the interstate bridge and the mobility that's achieved there, as well as the mobility gain achieved by having a local connector between the shores.
So the stacked bridge being the freeway high speed through on the top and the more of a community bridge on the bottom, it sounds like you can kind of get in two bridges for the price of one.
Well, one would, yes, if one does infrastructure for communities, you definitely want to shape the design to give you the maximum benefit for as many people as possible. One of the things I see in the current design is a singular solution. It says all we're accommodating as far as rubber tire traffic is concerned, all we're accommodating is people in a freeway mentality, a freeway philosophy. you can still comply with all the freeway criteria with the collector distributor and just use it in that critical core section of the city. And that allows for the collector distributor to also function as an arterial connecting the shores. Essentially, as you point out, the equivalent of two bridges.
Mm-hmm. So the on-ramps and off-ramps associated with tying those, connecting to those two layers, are they simpler?
Well, in a few minutes we'll look at what this actually means to the two communities, and we'll look at plans that I've drawn that shows an indicative layout of how that can be accommodated. But yeah, essentially that's what it means.
Okay. There are people that would love to have light rail on this bridge. Does it accommodate light rail?
Absolutely.
Does it accommodate heavy rail?
You know, David, one of the problems I see with the way we do bridges today is we create a design brief, a design program that all of our planners and engineers are required to meet. In this case, this bridge is being designed to meet a specific requirement for light rail, a specific requirement for pedestrians, and a specific requirement for interstate highway mobility. Valid 20 years in the future, maybe with the present economy, 30 years in the future. You know, a specific point in the horizon where we're bringing in standards and criteria that are singular purpose when it comes to the rubber tire traffic. I mentioned the spaghetti laid over the landscape. On the other hand, we're not designing the bridge to meet the needs 30 years in the future. We're designing a bridge to meet the physical realities of a sustainable bridge that must be valid 200 years from now.
So once we build this, it's going to be around for a couple of centuries, and we want to make sure we're not too nearsighted, that we can provide something for the long term. And so this design, the double-decker, simple design that you've come up with, how well does that compare?
It compares beautifully with providing future generation with transportation flexibility.
Okay, so multimodal, that's one of those keys.
Multimodal. With the general design structural requirements that go into a bridge like this, if you have a straight alignment, without curves, without merging traffic, whatnot, you could use the shoulders of the upper level bridge for commuter rail, for high-speed rail, for additional light rail, because the geometry is very easy to accommodate in the bridge. Same with the lower level, be shore to shore. You can augment it with additional transit. You can augment it with additional rubber tire capacity. So you could go from, say, 4 lanes, 2 in each direction on the local arterial connecting the shores, the collector distributor, to maybe 3 lanes in each direction. You create a transportation platform that future generations can manipulate so that they can take advantage of whatever transit opportunities they are presented with.
So there's provision for multiple choices in the future. And so you build the bridge, and if they want to add a heavy rail, light rail, other forms that may come up with 50 years from now, the provision is there. You can build it because you've already got the straight alignment that accommodates that. You have provision.
The separation of through traffic, interstate, local traffic. And I can't help but think that, well, you deal with technology.
Yes.
We are seeing smart cars evolving quickly.
The world is going to change.
There will be a day within a couple decades where we will probably have cars talking to one another, traveling up and down the I-5 corridor that act as trains.
In other words, the vehicles will get smarter.
The vehicles will get smarter. We will probably get lazier. And we will see that we will want to apply that technology to our existing infrastructure. All these mergings that are going on within this bridge crossing, they basically preclude that without having to make heavy modifications. The inside lanes certainly can be converted over, but the merging and whatnot makes it probably less safe. Definitely you would not want to mix high-speed rail or commuter rail within that. So you want a transportation platform that provides future generations with options and choices they will discover they need to apply onto the existing infrastructure while we satisfy the criteria that our funding sources have put forward to us on the short term. That's smart design. That's what I call sustainable design.
So what you have in your proposed design is a platform which basically accommodates the present and leaves lots of flexibility for the future for a lower cost in comparison to the current design, which consumes all of the available space with today's technology, which is relatively slow, light rail, a single transit option, and doesn't leave anything for the future. What about pedestrians, bikes? Where do you put that?
The arterial level, where traffic is moving slower, where the shoulders can be wide, where people can be seen, they can see. One of the difficulties with the current design is you have this environment that pedestrians are being asked to go in, and they may not be able to see anybody if there's no other pedestrians. It's not an observable, you don't necessarily have a sense of security when you're in that large expansive space and there's really no way to flee if there's bad people there. Mm-hmm. You have pedestrian space is much more effective when in an urban environment, when you have a sense of observability within that. So light rail, local traffic, shore-to-shore arterial traffic, 45 miles an hour, wide expansive pedestrian way, 25, 30 feet where you can bring a bikeway into it, and may even want to consider dropping the speed a little bit on the arterial as more and more people get active with bikes so that they can share those lanes.
Sure, you don't have these huge noisy vehicles just rushing by you. It's more of
well, mind you do have the occasional large semi. And David, remember that I'm not proposing an alternative. All I've done is establish that another fundamental option exists that has significant benefit to the communities measured in terms of sustainability, footprint, environmental impacts, and cost.
So, and if I'm thinking that the pedestrian and the bikes and that kind of thing, that would be in the bottom level, which is a covered level anyway. It just makes it more of a, I'm thinking, we get a lot of rain here,
right.
We give you a bit of a shelter there. What you're proposing here, the argument against that is going to be, hey, we've studied this thing to death. Let's go full speed ahead. We can't just keep studying and come up with another design.
Any project, regardless of size, is a series of forks in the road that you can take. This project took a couple wrong choices, made a couple wrong choices in the fork in the road. The inappropriate use of I'll call it a wrong glide slope, was a fork in this road that forced a series of actions to be taken. The fact that they did not recognize that they were in effect creating a collector-distributor need on the outside shoulders and separating that. And I can understand that would not have been intuitive to people who had not really designed multiple numbers of freeways or transit systems in complex urban environments. Very easy one to be. You don't find it in our standards books. So it's easy for me to see that there was no signpost that told them they had a choice to make at that junction. So what I discovered that if you had made a couple different course directions, that you probably would have ended up with a significantly different project. And when we look at what it might imply to the different communities, I think you'll find it most intriguing.
Well, I'm curious. We've had a number of basic changes. For instance, they designed this box girder type of design, spent years on that, and within a month of it being revealed, it got shot down as unbuildable. When did you first present this to the CRC? This alternative?
A little over a year ago.
And since then, they've thrown out their current design and started with something new. Why wouldn't they consider this design?
Well, we do things in this country in a rather odd way. We are process-driven. We put our decision-making into a series of steps. Once you've passed that step, it's very, very difficult to retreat and create a different direction to a project. it's a very complicated scenario of relationships and commitments and agreements that go in place as you're building a project from its beginning. So what I see happen that was unfortunate is about 2007, 2008, in that period of time,